Good afternoon, everybody. ESL Grammar 320. In this video, I will be discussing the present perfect and the present perfect progressive tense. Box number 3 here, present perfect and the present perfect progressive connect past with the present. Use them to show actions and states that began in the past and continue until now. Present perfect, I've had my iPad for 6 months, present perfect progressive. He's been writing a blog for 8 years. We often use the present perfect and the present perfect progressive with for plus length of time and since plus a starting point. Mary has worked at her company for 6 years. Mary has been working at her company since 2011. So yes, very similar tenses. The format for these um, these grammar rules, you're going to have subject plus have plus past participle. Okay, and so just using subject pronouns, I, you, he, she, we, they. Um, for have, that is going to be present tense, right? So I have, you have, he has, she has, we have, and they have. Now this gets a little tricky, and I'll sort of explain why. But a past participle is going to be a form of a verb. And so for regular verbs, okay, in past tense, the past participle is equal to the past tense form, the simple past form. Okay, so what I mean by that is a simple past verb is going to be uh, ending in ed, right? So I cooked. Okay, now the past participle form is going to be cooked also, but to use it in the perfect tense is I have cooked. And the meaning is different in that I cooked, simple past. This action started in the past and has been completed in the past, right? I have cooked, right? That action started in the past and continues to the present, right? So I have cooked for 2 hours. So right now, present for me, it's 2:27 p.m. I have cooked for 2 hours. It's 2:27 p.m. I either am continuing to cook, but I started at 12:27 p.m. Okay. As you may know, also you can use, and this is where it gets a little confusing. Um, Grammar is always confusing, right? But we use I have for to show possession. I have a dog, for example, right? In the perfect tense and the present perfect continuous, we can use I have, um, or I'm sorry, subject plus have as a contraction. So uh, I have equals I've, you have, you've, he has, he's, she has, she's, we have, we've, and they have, they've. Okay. And so now with I've cooked, right? Where this is really confusing is he's and she's can also be when we have a third person singular. I'll show you, but um, this also can be he is, right? He's he's happy, adjective. He's um, he's running, he's cooking, he's a student, right? In this case, these examples are he is. Now, when we have that past participle, okay, again, in a regular past tense verb, one that ends in ed, that contraction is going to be the perfect tense. He's cooked. He's cooked since 10 a.m. He's studied for 2 hours. In this case, he has studied. He has studied for 2 hours. Microsoft Word thinks there's an error. It's not. He's is a contraction for he has. He's studied for 2 hours. And contractions are very important for listening skills as well as speaking. Native speakers often use contractions, and it's faster, right? And so without understanding these contractions, it's very, very difficult to hear them when people speak. So he's cooked since 10 a.m. He's studied for 2 hours. And then an irregular verb. So irregular verbs have a different, not all of them. Some have the same past participle as the simple past, but irregular verbs can have a different past participle. But some are the same. I ate yesterday, right? So we know ate is the simple past for eat, but for the past participle, eat. I've eaten for 2 hours. I've eaten for 2 hours. Okay, and that's going to be your present perfect tense. Kind of moving on a little bit. Present perfect progressive. So he's been writing a blog for 8 years. This tense is very similar to the present perfect. However, I'll show you some examples and try and explain the difference. So been is the past participle of be. If we have subject plus have plus been, right? Then oftentimes that's going to be followed with adjective because it is the verb to be, adjective, noun, or a verb. And in this case, if you look at the grammar chart, you'll notice with been, we're going to use the ing form of a verb. Okay, so I'll try and show some examples here for you. But verb ending in ing. Okay, and so I've been a student for 2 years, right? A student's going to be a noun. When we have a past participle, that's always going to be a verb in the present perfect tense. I've been happy for a while. I've been happy for some time. And then to try to illustrate, I've been cooked, right? And so this is where it gets different. In the present perfect, we have I've cooked, but here I've been cooking, okay? I would say I've cooked for 2 hours. I've been cooking for 2 hours. These two are nearly identical in meaning. Many people will disagree with that, but that these two could be used interchangeably, I would say. But certain verbs are not interchangeable. And to try to show some examples, let's see. I've been studying for 2 hours. I've been studying for 4 years, right? I've studied for 2 hours. Okay, so this is, I would say, an example where the verb study and studying have a very different meaning, right? And so I've been studying for 4 years. This doesn't mean I've studied 4 years straight, right? I've been studying means, yeah, I study at the school or a subject for 4 years, sort of on and off. Whereas here, I've studied for 2 hours is going to be a consistent time, just continually for 2 hours, right? Um, if I've been living here for 4 years, and I've lived here for 4 years. That's, I would say, very identical in meaning. But again, I've been running for 3 months. All right. This here, the verb run, when we have been, okay, run is going to be I run, I still run, and it's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. For it doesn't specify, but that action started 3 months ago, and I've been doing it regularly. Okay, or I could say I've now in this case I've ran for 2 hours, or let's just say 3 months. I ran for 3 months. That's uh, sentence one here. Been is going to be more accurate, right? Because when we have the present perfect, again, this is going to be a more continual basis. I've ran for 3 hours, makes more sense. Notice how Microsoft even notices that mistake. I've ran for 3 months. I think early, yeah, it wants to it wants to change it to been running because it knows humanly it's impossible to run for 3 months straight, right? So that this present perfect continuous makes more sense. I ran, now when I change it to 3 hours, it doesn't want to correct me anymore, and that's because it is possible to run for 3 hours straight. I could have started at 11:30 to 2:30 p.m., right? And in this case, this is an example of a simple past verb that is identical to the past participle, right? So I ran yesterday. I ran for 3 hours. These two are both irregular verbs. They don't end in ed, so we don't say runned, right? runned, we say ran. And so that's an example of an irregular verb here. That is the same for the simple past as well as the past participle.